Hello everyone. It's a great honour to be part of the agenda for FinTech America's TV. This is my first time speaking at one of these events for FATV, so hopefully it won't be the last. But let's see how interesting you find this. So I'm Neal Cross. I am the co-founder and chairman of PictureWealth. I've done a lot of different things in my career before this. I've been a games developer. I've taught Kung Fu. I've designed aquariums. I was Chief Innovation Officer at DBS Bank in Singapore. I've headed up MasterCard Labs, and I spent many happy years at Microsoft. And now I've co-founded my own wealth tech business, where we really drill into what is the future of the wealth industry and how do we combine digital and physical to maximize the benefit for our customers, our partners like financial planners, and our shareholders. But this isn't a talk about how wonderful PictureWealth is. This is really something I've started to notice. I presume over the past 18 months or so. You know, we've all heard of the phrase digital transformation or digital disruption. Well, I hope you all have. If you haven't, then you probably haven't talked to a consultant in a while, or checked your email. And we seem to be in this rush towards mass digitization. I started to look at this, and I started to realize that maybe that businesses are starting to do this wrong, and maybe there's going to be a lot of failure in the digital transformation space. And I think, you know, through some of the latest reports we're seeing, businesses are reporting that roughly about 80% of their digital transformations are not delivering on their promise. So let me talk you through why I think that the future isn't digital, and actually there's a better way to get through these times of disruptions, and especially what we're going through and have gone through so far due to COVID. So firstly, let's look at these four businesses. And these are held up as some of the greatest, technical and digital innovators of all time. As we know, Amazon very much started in the book space, moved on to selling other products, moved on to cloud computing. Genius innovators, 100% digital. They've, are responsible for really completely reinventing the e-commerce market globally. And they're 100% digital, aren't they? I mean, they're very much about, that everyone's going to buy online rather than go to a physical store. And Airbnb, we know, there's what's the old quote? I think it goes something like, Airbnb's, the largest real estate company that owns no properties. And so Airbnb is the middleman between people with properties and people who want accommodation. 100% digital. And financial, as we know, are part of Alibaba, the world's largest payment platform. And 100% digital, and they do fintech, but they're not a bank. So they don't have any branches. And Uber, we all know, and many of us love Uber. And what do they say about Uber? The largest transport company that owns no vehicles. And so we've been looking at these kind of digital giants. Everyone's rushing towards. We want to emulate them. We want to be like them. And regular companies, especially banks, are using these as icons that they can, rush towards and copy, and hopefully get that kind of digital essence that they can bring into their corporate, and then they can be a disruptor themselves. So when we look at these companies, what I started to notice is actually they're not rushing towards digitization. You could almost say that some of these are rushing away from digitization. So take Amazon as a good example. Amazon recently, as we know, acquired Whole Foods for $13.4 billion. So this digital giant, this digital champion is buying physical assets. Okay, So Amazon's no longer just an online store. Secondly, Airbnb is building and selling its own apartments. This is an old story now. Wait a minute, I thought they were the world's largest real estate company that didn't own any properties. Airbnb actually own properties. They're running towards physical assets. And financial, surely just a tech company, not regulated. Oh no, they've got virtual banking licenses. And based on the latest news, as we saw around their IPO, they have to follow the same capital adequacy rules as other finance players in the Greater China region. So they're just not a tech company anymore. They're actually running towards physical pieces. And Uber don't own cars, do they? Well, actually they do. And so when Uber retrenched out of Southeast Asia, they had to sell their cars, unhired fleet. So they did actually own vehicles. So that made me think, are we being blinded by this digital? And so that if the people that we hold up as the visionaries in digital are rushing towards physical, whereas contemporary companies and banks are kind of ditching the physical and rushing towards digital, what's happening? Why are these large players running towards physical? That got me thinking. So let's have a look at what's happening in the world today. As we know, as I said, the word digital disruption has been used once or twice, I've noticed, across various mediums, including press and conferences. And we tend to think of it as technology. We think that, digital transformation, especially innovation, is about technology. I ask people, what's your favorite innovation? It's usually something around an app. And that made me think, is the problem that we have more systematic? Are we confusing innovation, digital, and technology? I say why. We tend to think about innovation as something new and cool and sexy. We tend to think about technology as something which drives innovation. But when we think about technology, what really is technology? We seem to put it on such a pedestal. I'll give you an example. Here, technology comes from two words. The original Greek word of techne, which means art, craft, or logic, and the logica, which is the systematic treatment or logic. And so you can actually, the word technology kind of means crafty logic. But we always think of technology as really two things, don't we? When everyone mentions technology, in my mind, it's circuits or code, yeah? And circuits as in, physical devices. Things like phones, yeah? Things like Xboxes, games machines, tablets. We think of technology as that physical, the circuits, the electronics. Or we think of technology and innovation as code. Yeah? And so apps, software, websites, digital experiences, AR, VR, blockchain. But if you think about all the advances that we, in theory, have had over, the last 10 years, all the great innovations, really all they are is they're either some new circuit boards or they're just lines of code which we just put in a different format. And so if we put the lines of code in a different format, in one format it makes an app, for example. Put it in another format, it makes an AI platform. Put them in another format, it makes a blockchain. And so actually we think that we've had huge technological advances. Really, you could say that most of that, not all, certainly there's some amazing innovations have happened, but nearly all, what we consider innovation, is just realigning different lines of code and getting the occasional new circuits, like a new phone to run it on. But technology is a much bigger field than that. Yeah, and so technology is not just, digital is not just about technology, and innovation is certainly not just about technology. But we put technology on this huge pedestal, yeah? And, here's an example. I go to lots of, certainly used to go to lots of events and talk to startups. And I'll chat to a startup and say, hey, what do you guys do? And they're like, oh, we're a blockchain startup. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what do you do then? Oh, we said we're a blockchain startup. Yeah, but what do you do? Oh, we do blockchain. Let me rephrase that. What problem are you trying to solve? I know that you use blockchain. That's patently clear, and you seem incredibly proud to tell me multiple times. But what problem do you solve? What's your business do? How do you make money? Oh, we do cross-border payments. Oh, okay, you're a payment startup then. No, we're a blockchain startup. And that really triggered it for me. I've been in technology a very long time. Yeah, nearly 40 years now. And at no time in that 40 years have I felt that we are in a place today where a company introduces themselves based on their construction materials. Blockchain, AI, VR, AR is another great example. But that's like me saying, that I'm a real estate company, but I described myself, as a sand and cement person. What do you do? I use sand and cement. But you build hotels. Yeah, but I'm a sand and cement startup. And so why are we mentioning our construction materials above the problem we're solving? That really interests me. And so I'm thinking that technology is going to be the ultimate savior of our business or the ultimate way that we're going to solve these problems. And so we've put technology on a pedestal. So let's recount. Digital giants are rushing towards physical, one. Number two, we're putting technology on a pedestal and we're highlighting above the problem we're solving. And I start to think, why is this? And let's look at these two. So let's look at Netflix and iTunes, yeah? Maybe if we look at these two, it'll help us understand what's currently happening. So Netflix. We know Netflix is the leader, certainly the leader today, it has been for some time, of streaming of video content. Yeah, amazing. I'm sure we love Netflix, and amazing use of technology. And on the other side, we have iTunes, maybe a bit older than Netflix, but certainly been hugely successful, again, using technology. And these two are held up as great examples of technology innovations. Wrong. They're not technology innovations. If you look at the two innovations that are contained in here, that both of them utilize, first, it's a pricing model innovation, yeah? So for Netflix, you don't buy a single film, you just get a subscription for the month, you watch as much as you want. Yeah, with iTunes, their pricing innovation was around that you could buy single songs and didn't have to buy a whole album, yeah? And so one, pricing model innovation. Two, distribution model innovation. And so I don't have to go to a shop to get my media content. Netflix delivered it to any device, up to 4 devices, I believe. Same with iTunes. I didn't need to go into a store to pick up a CD. I could get music on any device. And I could, with the pricing model innovation, buy single tracks. And so what made them successful was not technology. Everyone has access these days to the same technology. And when, as I said, we think of technology really as code, yeah? The fundamentals of coding there's been improvements, but really hasn't changed for quite some time, yeah? But what they did, it wasn't the technology that made them successful, it was their pricing model innovation, the distribution model innovation. Now, as I said, I think we're putting technology on too high a pedestal. For me, it's just like sand and cement, as the earlier photo. It's the construction materials, if you will, for me to build stuff. So let me tell you a story. There's myself with slightly shorter hair, and the other older gentleman there is Garry Kasparov, the famous chess grandmaster. Now, I met Garry, me and him were speaking at a conference in Europe a little while ago, the AI and Robotics conference, and we hit it off. We had dinner and had a good chat, and he was very impressed with what I was doing around innovation at the time at DBS Bank. And so Gary said, look, I'd love to see what you're doing next time in Singapore. So a few months later, I got a message to say, Gary Kasparov will be coming to Singapore. And so we got our innovation lab ready, and we had all these amazing AI projects. And he came in, and the team were all super excited. Well, certainly the older ones who knew who Gary Kasparov was. And we took him around all our AI projects. And he's fascinated about AI because obviously Gary Kasparov was the famous chess player who was beaten by Deep Blue, the IBM machine, back in 1997, I believe. And so he's always since then been beaten by a machine, been fascinated around AI. So we took him around our innovation lab. I sat him down with the team. I said, Gary, what do you think? And he said, Neal, I've just come from Google X, and this innovation lab is better than Google's. Of course, I was like really shocked. I thought he was just saying that to, be nice, and got a lot of younger people in my team, maybe, inspire them or excite them. So I thought, well, I was a little cautious. I said, so Gary, can you explain what you mean here? Why? Thank you. That's a wonderful feedback, and we really appreciate you being here today. But please tell me, why would you say that? And he said, Neal, they showed me how they were delivering bagels to office workers using drones. You showed me the future of the finance industry and how you're making it reality. That's why I felt you were better. And so that's really interesting that we were focused on kind of solving real problems in people's lives, where he felt other labs were spending time building technology for technology's sake, not really solving the right problems. And so that was a great insight. And then we start to see that we really are blinded by our technology. And to so much so that it's blinded us really to what's happening with disruption. And these are the people who cause digital disruption. Yeah. And you're wondering who they are. Who are these people? They work at Google, they work at Apple, do they work at Microsoft, do they work at Snapchat or TikTok? How come these people cause digital disruption? Well, let's look at what digital disruption was. People think it's about a competitor came in with new technology and wooed your customers away from you. Well, that certainly appears to be, what first appears to have happened. But I don't think that that's the case. I think what caused digital disruption is these people, and these people are unhappy customers. And I think we've lost sight. Many businesses I talk to have lost sight of what they are as a business. Because in my mind, a company only has one thing to do, and every company has the same thing to deliver on, which is you help customers solve their problems. That is it. Now, how the customers solve those problems certainly change over time. So when I talk to many companies, I was talking to a bank CEO, I said, what do you do as a business? I said, Neal, come on, I said, okay, entertain me. So talk through, obviously, we've got a lending business, consumer corporate, we do payments, we do financing, we do insurances, blah, blah, blah. He goes, what business do you think I'm in? I said, well, let's take it from a customer perspective. So from a customer perspective, they don't think you sell them insurance. They think you help them protect the people they love. That's why they buy an insurance. The problem they're trying to solve is they're trying to protect the people and the things that they care about, and they buy insurance. They don't get a mortgage. They give their family shelter. They create a family home. Or they're having a new child, they need a bigger place. So again, they're trying to solve problems in life, and yet the bank thinks, when they go to talk to a bank, the bank just pushes product. And so digital disruption, in my mind, happens where the company has really lost touch of what problem it's solving for its customers. And someone comes in and solve those customer problems better and take the customer away. And admittedly, that initially happened through the use of very smart technology. Again, everyone has the same levels of technology these days. But it wasn't caused by technology. It was a divergence between what the company thought it did and what its customers did. And, we all use Kodak as a great example. But Kodak, again, for me, that's what I feel. They lost sight of the fact. The customer problem they were solving was that customers wanted to store memories. And so to store memories, they had to either... they didn't mind if it was on film. They didn't mind if it was on digital. They just needed to store memories. Where I think Kodak got so wrapped up with the film versus digital piece that just didn't deliver on what the customers wanted, and here we are today. But there's stories all the way through history where this is true, going back hundreds of years. The US railroads didn't see trucking as a threat to their business because they were in the rail industry and trucks were on the road. Of course, as we know, nearly a good proportion of the transport is actually trucks versus trains, and so they lost a big part of their business. So digital disruption caused by unhappy customers. So one set of people obviously becoming incredibly clear that they're important in our business. That's customers, yeah? And thinking about how we solve those problems better. There is another entity which is equally important in our organization, and that's staff, yeah? And I think we forget that as companies. We forget that actually our greatest asset are our biological assets, yeah, which are rarely mentioned, on our asset register. And so if we're transforming a business, what my guidance is, don't transform your company, digitally transform your staff, and they will transform your company, yeah. A lot of mistakes I see is where people try and use the tools of the old and the mindset of the old to build the world of the new. And you see this is a classic mistake, and actually it can be lethal, that you try and emulate a tech company or a startup, and you just kind of go, we take some of their tools, blah, 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 and then you try and execute what Google or Amazon or Facebook did, and it fails dramatically. Well, that's because you need to really dig deep on the culture of your staff at the company. We need to get them to learn the new tools to build the world of the new. Yeah? We think about many companies, especially in finance. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I've worked at tech companies, I've worked at finance companies, I've worked at fintech, I've worked at social enterprises, and each one of these has a vastly different culture. And if you think about a bank, they can tend to be very hierarchical, risk adverse, and non-collaborative. Yeah, and they have to own everything. A bank owns its own branches, its own tech, most of its products, its people, its buildings, etc. Now, if you compare that with a tech company, tech companies have flat structures. So banks are hierarchical, tech companies are flat structures. Banks are risk averse, which is hilarious because the bank's entire business model is based on risk. But anyway, tend to be internally risk adverse, fear of failure. Tech companies experimental. Banks, non-collaborative, must own everything. Tech companies build platforms where people can collaborate and businesses can monetize. And so vastly different. And so if you're just trying to kind of, suddenly, like some bank CEOs wake up one day and go, oh, we're a tech company, and go to press and tell everyone they're a tech company through some, misunderstanding that they've hired some more engineers and hence a tech company is all about having lots of tech people. There's a fallacy. Being in a tech company is having the culture of a tech company. Yeah, the most junior people wouldn't talk to the most senior person without recrimination. That you're always looking for partnerships over building stuff yourself. Yeah, that you're less hierarchical. Yeah, and that you experiment. And these are massive times of change. And so many banks are using, like here, workshops and experimentation, and really kind of focus in on understanding the customer and building experiments. Now, experiments can sound a bit scary, but the simplest experiment in the world, I was at a meeting with the head of a life insurance business. And she said, what do you think? I was doing some review work, and they've got a website, and they haven't sold much. Selling life insurance online is incredibly hard in most regions around the world, and they were struggling. So I said to them, so when people sign up or refer a friend, you give them vouchers for Starbucks. Yeah, okay. And why did you pick Starbucks vouchers? Oh, because people like Starbucks. Okay. Did you run any experiments when you were building the site? Did you, for example, offer them, Amazon vouchers over Starbucks to see if that was more effective? Did you play with the values? Maybe it's $10 versus $20, which is going to be more effective. I said, oh, no. I said, well, you should think about maybe trying to run some experiments, try some variation to understand exactly what you need to do to build an effective website that sells life insurance. And she goes, well, we don't have time. I said, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. We'll take one of your life insurance brochures, yeah, and I'll take a piece of paper and I'll put 3 options on there. You can have a $20 Starbucks voucher, $20 Amazon voucher, a $20, whatever voucher, yeah, JD Sports, for example. And then I'm going to go down, and who normally buys life insurance from you? Oh, it's about 30-year-old working people. Okay, right. I'm going to go downstairs in the lift. I'm going to stand in the street. I'm going to stop 30-year-old working people. I'm going to show them your value prop for your life insurance. I'm going to ask them which of these vouchers they want. I'm going to do that 100 times, and we'll know exactly, within probably an hour, what the value should be of your voucher and what provider it should be. That's an experiment. It's as dumb and simple as that. And so she kind of realised, and I said, look, you've created an amazing website, but do you think really on your first go, you magically created the perfect engine to turn internet traffic into life insurance sales? Just on your first go, you got the absolute perfect machine for that. I said, no. I said, that's the value of experimentation. You can keep tuning the machine to make it highly effective. But of course, nobody likes to fail. So you have to create a culture of ambition and getting people to try new things, but having a framework where obviously the failure is minimized and, it's celebrated. But you have to learn from failure. It can't be done. Failure should not be because people did something wrong. Failure in this context is because they tried lots of different things and they learned from that. And of course, we don't experiment with live customer data and things that can fail. So imagine then, why am I saying the future isn't digital? So imagine everything I've talked about is about digital. So, okay, we put technology on too much of a pedestal. Okay, digital disruption, maybe it wasn't just about tech, it was about unhappy customers. And then, so imagine then you focus, get very customer-centric on your customers, really think about what problems they're trying to solve and reposition your offering to them, both in the product, the marketing, the distribution, even the service, yeah? So that's great. And then we inspire our staff to be experimental, do their career's best work. I mean, that for me is the job of any leader, yeah? Just inspire your staff to do their career's best work. Yeah. So imagine we've done all that, yeah? And then we're ready. We're an incumbent business. We've digitized our staff, customer-centric. We're experimental. We've put in some really cool tech, really great apps. And now we enter the digital sea, yeah? And we're ready. Now we're ready to just get swallowed. because we have entered the sea and we are land animals. And the people who live in the digital sea, many of them made the sea, yeah? The Googles, the Facebooks, the Apple, the Amazons, yeah? And we'll never be as good as them. And what have we done? We've just completely digitized our offering. So these digital giants can just come in and just swallow our customer base whole. And we've seen this happening. And so this is the danger we're at. It's as we digitize, as we throw away the world of the old and throw away our physical assets, we think about closing branches or, using AI and robotics to, reduce our staff base and get rid of the world of the old and rush towards the digital, that maybe some of those things we should have kept. Yeah. And that's why I've got this phrase, which is islands in the digital sea. And so as a bank, if you completely digitize all your products, never meet your customers, yeah, and then really it is just a price compete. And you can never compete with Google and Amazon and Alibaba and Apple on price, yeah, as a financial organization. And so what do you retain from the old world to be this island in the digital sea? Don't forget these big tech companies, even though they're moving into digital, they find that very hard, yeah? And so Amazon doesn't have branches. So maybe we keep some of our physical assets, our brand, our people, yeah? And maybe combine them with digital. And I think actually the role of digital is to turbocharge our physical assets. And whether that's our customers, whether that's our staff, whether that's our processes or our branches, and all these are going to change. We know the branches are going to maybe already moved away from transaction engines into sales engines, but maybe they're partnership places, maybe they're co-innovation centres, maybe they're financial education centres, but maybe they still have a place, these physical and combining with the digital. And so in my mind, the future isn't digital. The future is hybrid. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see in digital transformation. You've got to work out where the robots, and I mean robots, not the robots in this slide, but robots as in software, AI, data. Did you know there's a new type of AI called LI, which is highly prevalent, especially in the world of startup LI. It's a type of AI, it's actually a lie, LI, where a lot of what people call AI, in fairness, is just logic statements in code or flowcharts, if this, then that. But anyway, so robots, as in software, data, AI, or LI, and humans. And so historically, we've had humans doing jobs that robots can do, and we're trying to get robots to do jobs that humans should do. Yeah, and that's what we did at PictureWealth. Wealth for us isn't about, robo-advisors. Certainly that's part of the future wealth, but only a small part. Going online, buying ETFs, getting a pie chart. Really, wealth for me is about dealing with people's hopes and fears. I mean, that's it, really, yeah? I hope that when I retire, I can go on nice holidays, to Sumatra. I worry that I won't be able to afford to send my child to a good university. That's hopes and fears. And, wealth, and rightly or wrongly, most of the things in our life, major milestones, have a financial element that's required. So that's what we found, is you put the humans talking to the humans, understand their hopes and fears, and we get the robots doing a lot of the aggregation, data collection, and nudging and education of our clients. And so the future, in my mind, is not digital. The future is the same as the past. The future is hybrid. So thank you for listening for me today, and have a great rest of your conference. And thank you, FinTech Americas TV.